Let's get right into it. Number 15. The Baby Monkey Nightmare. Imagine being a baby monkey who just wants a hug, but instead, you're handed two fake moms, one made of cold wire and another made of soft cloth. Neither has a pulse. Welcome to one of psychology's most infamous horror stories, Harry Harlow's mother love experiments. In the 1950s, Harlow wanted to understand the nature of attachment. You know, why babies love their moms. So he separated newborn rhesus monkeys from their real mothers and raised them in cages with two surrogate mothers. One gave milk but was made of wire, while the other offered no food but was soft and fuzzy. Guess which one the babies clung to? Yeah, the soft one. Even when starving, they'd rather hug the cozy fake mom than eat from the wire mom. Because apparently, emotional comfort beats nutrition. Sounds touching until you realize the rest of the experiment. Harlow then took it up about 17 levels of cruel, isolating baby monkeys entirely, locking them alone for months or even years to see what would happen to their brains. Spoiler, they went insane. They'd rock, bite themselves, scream, and refuse to interact with others even after being freed. Some monkeys were then forced to mate, yes, forced, to see if they'd make good mothers. They didn't. They'd reject their babies or even kill them. Harlow, ever the tender-hearted scientist, proudly dubbed one of his isolation chambers the Pit of Despair, because apparently subtlety wasn't his strong suit. But the wild part? These cruel experiments actually proved something important. Love and affection aren't optional for mental health. Depriving a living thing of touch and connection doesn't just make it sad. It rewires its brain. So yeah, next time someone tells you science is all about progress, remind them it sometimes comes dressed in a baby monkey's nightmare. Number 14. The shock button. You're in a room with a man in a lab coat telling you to push a button. Every time you do, another person screams, louder, then stops. You ask if they're okay. The scientist says, "Please continue. Welcome to the Milgram Obedience Experiment, a cheerful little test on how far normal people will go when following orders." In the 1960s, psychologist Stanley Milgram at Yale University decided to test the idea that good people just following orders could explain atrocities like the Holocaust. So he set up a fake memory test, where volunteers thought they were administering electric shocks to another participant who was actually an actor. With every wrong answer, they'd crank the dial higher, from mild zaps to lethal 450 volts. The actor behind a wall would scream, beg, then go silent. 2/3 of people, regular folks, not sociopaths, went all the way to maximum shock just because the man in the white coat told them to. No threats, no guns, just authority. Milgram's conclusion: most people aren't evil. They're obedient. Our brains are wired to trust power and follow rules, even when our guts are screaming, "Maybe don't electrocute Steve." The study was so disturbing that many participants had emotional breakdowns afterward, and the ethical outrage it caused basically birthed modern consent rules in psychology. Still, the lesson remains. Under the right conditions, anyone, yes, even you, could become the villain in a lab coat's twisted game show. Number 13. The Sleep Deprivation Torture Chamber. What happens when you don't sleep for, say, 264 hours? That's 11 days straight. Randy Gardner found out the hard way. In 1963, this 17-year-old high school student decided to stay awake for a science fair project. No drugs, no caffeine, just sheer teenage arrogance. Scientists heard about it and decided, hey, let's study this. By day 2, he was slurring words. By day 3, hallucinating. By day 5, he was convinced he was an NFL player. By day 11, he was basically a walking fever dream. His eyes couldn't focus, his memory evaporated, and he couldn't tell reality from imagination. When it was finally over, he slept for 14 hours, woke up, and somehow recovered fully. No permanent damage. Which honestly feels unfair. The rest of us lose one night of sleep and feel like we've been hit by a bus. But here's the twist. Later research on rats showed that total sleep deprivation can literally kill you. After just 2 weeks without rest, the rats' immune systems collapsed, and they died, sometimes from infections, sometimes for no clear reason at all. So yeah, your body doesn't just like sleep. It needs it to keep you alive. Think of it as a nightly brain reboot. Skip it too many times and your system just blue screens. And in case you were wondering, no, there will never be another official stay awake record. It's now considered unethical to even attempt it, which tells you everything you need to know. Number 12. The mind control experiment. If there's ever been a phrase that screams definitely illegal, it's secret government LSD mind control project. And yet, that's exactly what Project MKUltra was. In the 1950s through the 70s, the CIA ran a top-secret series of experiments trying to figure out if LSD could be used for brainwashing, truth serums, or psychological warfare. Because apparently someone thought, you know what would make spies more effective? Hallucinating rainbows while talking to God. They dosed soldiers, prisoners, mental patients, and even random civilians, often without their consent. One guy was given LSD every day for 174 days straight. Another jumped out a window after being secretly drugged. Others reported lifelong paranoia and flashbacks. The program was so secretive that most of its files were destroyed before Congress could investigate. But leaked documents later revealed hundreds of bizarre tests, hypnosis combined with drugs, sensory deprivation, electroshock therapy, even attempts to create hypnotic assassins. The CIA claimed it was about defense. In reality, it was human experimentation that would make a horror movie jealous. The irony? None of it worked. LSD didn't make super spies. It made people think they were melting into their chairs. So yeah, if your brain ever feels like it's short-circuiting, just remember, somewhere in the 1950s, a government agent thought that was a good thing. Number 11. The prison that ate people. You know that saying, power corrupts? Turns out it really, really does, faster than anyone expected. In 1971, psychologist Philip Zimbardo set up the Stanford Prison Experiment, one of the most infamous studies in history. The idea was simple. Take 24 healthy, average college students, split them into 2 groups, guards and prisoners, and put them in a fake jail built in the basement of Stanford University. What could go wrong, right? Within 24 hours, everything went wrong. The guards started acting cruel, humiliating prisoners, making them do push-ups, cleaning toilets with their bare hands, and enforcing bizarre punishments. The prisoners, who knew it was fake, began having breakdowns. They cried, screamed, refused food, and begged to leave. Zimbardo, who was supposed to be an objective scientist, got so sucked into his role as warden that he didn't stop it, until his girlfriend saw what was happening and basically told him, "What the hell are you doing?" The experiment, planned for 2 weeks, lasted only 6 days. Zimbardo's takeaway: put normal people in a cruel system, and they'll start acting like monsters. But critics later pointed out that the whole thing was more theater than science. Zimbardo allegedly encouraged the guards to be tough, making the results murkier than a prison toilet. Still, the Stanford prison experiment lives on as a dark reminder that you don't need evil people to create evil. Just the right costume, some authority, and a locked door. Number 10. The head transplant horror. Let's take a sharp turn into pure Frankenstein territory. In the 1950s and 60s, Soviet scientist Vladimir Demikov decided it was time to push biology to its limits by performing dog head transplants. Yes, you heard that correctly. He sewed the head, and sometimes front legs, of a small dog onto the neck of a larger dog. The result? 2-headed dogs that could blink, lap water, and even move both heads independently for a few days. Then they'd die. Shocking, I know. Demikov wasn't doing this for fun. we hope. He claimed it was to advance the science of organ transplantation, and weirdly, it kind of worked. His work later influenced heart transplant pioneers, but the images, two living dog heads stitched together, sharing one body, are straight out of a nightmare. Western scientists repeated similar experiments, including one in 1970 when American neurosurgeon Robert White transplanted a monkey's head onto another monkey's body. It actually regained consciousness. It could see, chew, and move its face, but it was paralyzed from the neck down. It lived for 9 days. These experiments proved one grim fact. You can move a brain to a new body, but you can't reconnect the spinal cord. At least, not yet. So if you ever thought science fiction about body swaps was exaggerated, nope. It's just science being science, in the creepiest way possible. Number 9. The Electric Cat Revival. In 1780, an Italian scientist named Luigi Galvani discovered something that made the world think reanimation was real. He was dissecting a frog when he accidentally touched its leg with a metal scalpel that had picked up a static charge, and the leg twitched. It looked like the frog had come back to life. Cue the birth of galvanism, the idea that electricity could reawaken dead tissue. Soon, scientists were electrocuting all kinds of dead animals, trying to make them move. One guy made a decapitated dog's head blink. Another made a dead cat's paw twitch. And then came Giovanni Aldini, Galvani's nephew, who decided to one-up them all. In 1803, Aldini took a freshly executed criminal's body and attached electrodes to his face. In front of a London audience, he sent a jolt of electricity through it. The dead man's eyes opened, his jaw clenched, and one hand lifted as if to strike. People screamed. Aldini's point was to prove that electricity was the spark of life. Frankenstein, published a decade later, was directly inspired by these public shock shows. Of course, it didn't actually bring anyone back, but it did pave the way for modern defibrillators, which do restart hearts under far less horror movie circumstances. Still, the sight of a corpse twitching like it's auditioning for a zombie film? That's the stuff of nightmares and science. Number 8. The Facial Expression Factory. In the late 1800s, French neurologist Guillaume Duchenne had a passion, not for painting or poetry, but for photographing people's faces while he electrocuted them. Yep, Duchenne's experiments on facial expressions were as weird as they sound. He wanted to understand which facial muscles create emotions, so he attached electrodes to volunteers, often poor patients who couldn't say no, and zapped different parts of their faces to make them smile, frown, grimace, or look terrified. Then he photographed them. Repeatedly. The images, some still preserved, look like a cross between mug shots and cursed portraits. Wide eyes, forced smiles, faces frozen mid-spasm. Duchenne proudly cataloged these as the mechanics of human emotion. To be fair, his work did help establish the science of facial anatomy and how genuine smiles differ from fake ones. The Duchenne smile is still a real term today. But imagine being his patient. Hey, can you sit still while I electrocute your cheeks for art and science? Duchenne's obsession blurred the line between curiosity and cruelty, a recurring theme in this countdown. Because when science chases truth without empathy, the results tend to look, well, like a horror exhibit with excellent documentation. Number 7. The radioactive glow-up. The early 1900s, that glorious time when we thought radioactivity was healthy. Seriously, people used to brush their teeth with radium toothpaste and drink uranium-infused water because they thought it boosted energy. Spoiler, it did not. But perhaps the creepiest chapter in that glowing disaster was the story of the Radium Girls. These were young women hired to paint watch dials with glow-in-the-dark paint made of radium. They were told it was harmless, perfectly safe, their supervisors said, so they'd lick their paintbrushes to make the tips fine enough for detail work. You can guess how this ends. After months of licking radioactive paint, their jaws began to rot. Literally. Their bones glowed in the dark, their teeth fell out, their skin developed ulcers, and their bodies started breaking down from the inside. The condition became known as radium jaw. When they complained, the company blamed them, claiming it must be syphilis. Classy move. Eventually, several of the women sued, leading to a groundbreaking labor rights case and new workplace safety standards. But it came far too late for most of them. So yeah, next time someone says, "Trust the science," remember that science used to sell radioactive beauty products. Your jaw doesn't need a nightlight. Number 6, the human deprivation tank. Have you ever wanted to know what your brain does when it has nothing to do? Like, no sounds, no sights, no touch, just pure, endless nothingness? Psychologist John C. Lilly did. And of course, instead of journaling about it like a normal person, he built a sensory deprivation tank. In 1954, Lilly floated naked in a dark, soundproof tank filled with warm salt water that matched his body temperature, cutting off nearly all sensory input. Within minutes, his brain started producing wild hallucinations, colors, shapes, cosmic visions. Naturally, he thought he'd stumbled on a portal to higher consciousness. Over time, Lilly took it way further. He combined the tank with LSD experiments, because of course he did, claiming he was communicating telepathically with dolphins and interdimensional beings. His dolphin obsession got so bad, he built a flooded house for a dolphin named Peter to live with a woman named Margaret to teach him English. The project went off the rails. Let's just say dolphins are too smart, too hormonal, and science didn't come out looking great. Still, Lilly's sensory deprivation idea wasn't all madness. Modern float tanks actually reduce stress and anxiety. But the origin story? A trippy mix of science, psychedelics, and one guy taking me time a little too literally. Number 5, the severed doghead experiment. Let's visit 1928, where Soviet scientist Sergei Brukhonenko hosted what might be the most nightmarish science demonstration of all time. In front of a live audience, he presented a living dog's head. No body, just the head, lying on a table, hooked up to a machine he called the autojector, an early version of a heart-lung bypass. He pumped oxygenated blood through the head's veins, and the impossible happened. The head blinked, licked its lips, and even responded to sound. The crowd lost it. Some fainted. Others vomited. Brukhonenko calmly took notes. The point was to prove that the brain, and therefore life, could be artificially sustained, and horrifyingly, he succeeded. The demonstration was filmed and shown at medical conferences worldwide. It was one of the first steps toward modern life support machines. But it also raised a disturbing question. What exactly counts as alive? If your body is gone but your brain still reacts, are you you? Or just a ghost with working reflexes? So yeah, if you ever feel creeped out by hospital ventilators, just remember their great-great-grandfather was a literal severed dog head. Number 4, the sleep room. In the 1950s, psychiatrist Donald Ewan Cameron had an idea. Maybe you could erase mental illness by wiping the brain clean and rebuilding it. Sounds like sci-fi, right? He called it psychic driving. At the Allen Memorial Institute in Canada, Cameron used electroshock therapy, drug-induced comas, and looping audio tapes to reprogram patients' minds. They'd be sedated for weeks, given LSD, and blasted with hundreds of ECT sessions, while recordings played things like "You are a good person" on repeat for hours or days. Many patients forgot how to walk, talk, or even recognize family members. Some never recovered. And the kicker? The CIA secretly funded these experiments under Project MKUltra, hoping to use them for mind control. Cameron believed he was doing therapy. In reality, he was destroying lives, all under the banner of curing mental illness. Today, survivors still suffer from memory loss and trauma. And the hospital where it happened? Still operating, just, minus the brainwashing basement. So yeah, sleep room sounds cozy, until you realize it was basically a psychological blender with a lullaby on loop. Number 3, the human radiation experiments. Picture this. You go to the doctor for routine treatment, maybe a vitamin shot, maybe anemia therapy, and they secretly inject you with plutonium. Yeah, that happened. During the 1940s and 50s, in the early days of the atomic age, the U.S. government and military quietly ran a series of human radiation experiments to study how radioactive materials behaved inside the body. Their subjects? Prisoners, hospital patients, pregnant women, and soldiers, often without their consent. Doctors injected people with plutonium, uranium, or radioactive iodine, sometimes just to see what organs it would end up in. They fed radioactive oatmeal to children at a Massachusetts school, told it was part of a nutrition study. Some participants died of cancer years later. Others never knew what had been done to them. The documents were classified for decades, and when they finally came out in the 1990s, the country basically went, "Wait, we did what?" The justification, of course, was national security, because apparently nothing says safety like weaponizing your citizens' kidneys. The fallout, pun absolutely intended, led to new ethical standards in medical research. But it also revealed an uncomfortable truth. Science without transparency can be more dangerous than any nuclear bomb. So next time you get a blood test, maybe ask what's in the syringe, just to be sure. Number 2, the monster study. If you ever doubted that science can ruin a childhood, meet Wendell Johnson and the monster study, a 1939 experiment at the University of Iowa that decided to give kids speech impediments. Yes, on purpose. Johnson, a speech pathologist, wanted to prove that stuttering was learned, not innate, so he and his grad student Mary Tudor took 22 orphans and split them into 2 groups. One group was treated with kindness and encouragement, told they spoke beautifully. The other group, the unlucky half, was constantly criticized, told they stuttered, mocked for every slip-up. The result? Many of those normal kids developed lifelong anxiety and speech problems. Some never spoke normally again. Decades later, the university issued a formal apology and paid compensation to survivors, but the damage was irreversible. It's one of those experiments that makes you wonder. At what point did someone say, "Hey, maybe emotionally destroying orphans isn't great science"? Apparently, not soon enough. The moral? Words can literally rewire a child's brain, especially when they come from authority. The monster in the monster study wasn't stuttering. It was the adults running it. Number 1, the human brain freezer. Let's end this list where science and nightmare fuel become best friends, with cryonics. The idea, freeze your brain, or whole body, right after death so future scientists can revive you once technology catches up. Sounds cool, right? Literally. It started in the 1960s when physicist Robert Edinger published The Prospect of Immortality, claiming that dying might just be a temporary inconvenience. Soon, companies popped up offering to freeze you at 196 degrees C using liquid nitrogen. The catch? No one has ever been successfully revived, and the early attempts were rough. Bodies weren't frozen fast enough, causing ice crystals to shred their cells. Some facilities went bankrupt, and the corpses, patients, thawed out mid-storage. Picture the world's least appetizing popsicle melting in slow motion. Still, modern cryonics is surprisingly sophisticated. They now use special antifreeze solutions to prevent cell rupture, and wealthy clients pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for a shot at future resurrection. The irony? Even if scientists one day crack revival, your mind, your memories, personality, soul might not come back intact. You might just wake up as an extremely expensive amnesia patient. So cryonics might not give you eternal life, just eternal confusion. That's all for today. I'll be making similar videos in the future. Subscribe to see them.